And one more time, it's the Horror Guys.
I'm Kevin.
I'm Brian.
And we're back to the 80s.
1988.
A specific year.
Very specific. I don't think we've ever done that before.
But there was a lot of stuff that year.
There was.
A lot of noteworthy stuff, and we're going to talk about some of it.
Yeah, what do we got?
Oh, we got Pumpkinhead. And the original Child's Play came out that year. And The Serpent and the Rainbow. Waxwork. Nightmare on Elm Street 3, they were still making those. And Friday the 13th Part 7. Who knew they would make more of those?
They make a lot more of them still.
What? There were more after that?
There were.
Oh. So
okay,
anyway.
So all of those are from 1988.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about Pumpkinhead, Child's Play, The Serpent and the Rainbow, and Waxwork here.
The others are the bonuses, yes.
If you want to read about Nightmare on Elm Street 3, The Dream Warriors, and Friday the 13th, Part 7, The New Blood, go over to horrorbulletin.com and read them there.
Nightmare on Elm Street 3 was a pretty good one.
So it was Friday the 13th, Part 7, believe it or not.
It was, yeah. More of the same.
Friday the 13th, all the way up to Part 6, they just kept getting better and better.
And then
5 kind of was
they
bad.
Kind of peaked, and
I think 6 may have been. Believe it or not, movie number 6 for Friday the 13th was probably my favorite. That's when they started getting silly with the James Bond opening and stuff. All right, so yeah, go over to horrorbulletin.com, read about those other 2, sign up for the weekly newsletter while you're there, and you'll get all our reviews once a week in your mailbox, absolutely for free. Free. Everybody likes free.
There's free stuff.
You can get Horror Bulletin issue 20 over at horrorguysshop.com as an ebook and PDF or EPUB. Read that on your Kindle, read that on your phone, read that on your iPad or your computer, or wherever you can do EPUBs and PDFs.
Project it on the ceiling and fall asleep to the soothing words.
Ooh. Ooh.
Just an idea.
All right. Wow. Mind blown. Anyway, yeah, horrorguysshop.com. Pick up your free issue 20 of the Horror Bulletin Monthly, where we collect all our reviews for the month. Issue 21 will be out probably within a few days, and that will cover everything we've talked about in, what month is this? It's May.
It's May.
At least for a little while yet.
Uh-huh.
All right, so starting off in 1988, we had Pumpkinhead.
It's the great Pumpkinhead, Charlie Brown.
Charlie Brown always kind of looked like a pumpkinhead, big old round head.
That's the crossover we need. Linus waiting for the great pumpkin, and instead Pumpkinhead appears and starts killing everybody in the town.
You know somebody's done a cartoon of that at some point. It's the great Pumpkinhead,
Probably.
Charlie Brown.
Yeah.
Well, this one was directed by Stan Winston, written by Ed Justin, Mark Patrick Carducci, and Stan Winston stars Lance Henriksen, which I'm not sure this may have been his first big role. I don't know.
It was early.
It was early for him.
It was early for him, but he was no spring chicken. He was
famous old.
Yeah, well, not old, but yeah, not a young feller.
He never looked young.
Well,
the guy was born wrinkled.
Got a craggy face.
Yeah,
which has gotten craggier over the years. But yeah, he didn't make it big until right around here, and yeah, he wasn't super young. He was in really good shape for it.
Yeah. Well, anyway, Lance Henriksen, Jeff East, and John DeCino, hour and 26 minutes. Spoiler free, what happens?
This is a good and creepy little horror movie. The creature is excellent, and we see a lot of it. The other effects are well done, and the cast does a really nice job, and it was an all-around win. It's a classic.
Did not see this when it came out.
I saw it later.
Yeah, I saw it I've only seen it on TV at one time or another.
Yeah, same here.
Well, it's 1957, and there's some weirdness at the Hartley farm. Tom Hartley puts the horse in the barn and brings his shotgun inside. Will it be all right? Should I be afraid? Asks his wife. Well, they wait as we see a young man being chased through the woods by something. Clayton, who was the one being chased, beats on Tom's door and begs for help, but they know better than to let him in.
Yep, just stay out of its way.
Clayton moves on, and little Eddie gets a glimpse of the monster killing the man outside. Ooh. Well, we cut up
That'll leave an impact, won't it?
In the present day, Ed has grown up and now has a family of his own. Billy is his son, and Billy makes him a necklace with a little man on it. They drive over to the little grocery store that they run, like way out in the middle of the desert somewhere. We then cut to the required group of obnoxious teenagers on the way to a cabin in the woods. Well, we know where they're going to end up.
Cabin in the woods, huh?
Joel is the leader, and he's a jerk, and the others just sort of follow along. They all stop at the little roadside store. Mr. Wallace stops in with his 5 kids, and they're obviously really poor. The littlest boy steals Billy's ball, and they all say that Pumpkinhead comes for bad children. There's a nursery tale rhyme kind of thing and everything about him.
That's one to scare the kids.
Ed goes out to deliver some animal food to Wallace and leaves Billy in the store. The young people start riding dirt bikes all over like maniacs. Billy's dog runs outside, Billy chases him, and Joel runs over Billy. On the bright side, the dog is fine.
It's one of those kind of movies where the dog is okay.
They killed the kid, but the dog's all right.
Yeah.
Well, Joel has been drinking, and he's on probation, so he hops in the car and runs off. There's no phone in the store, and the others have no idea what to do or who to call. At their cabin, Chris wants to call the police, but Joel has ripped the phone wire out, so they can't. Ed takes Billy home, but he soon dies. He sees Mr. Wallace and asks him about an old woman in the hills that's supposed to have some powers. When Ed shows him Billy's body, Wallace warns him that the old woman is the last person he needs to see.
Yeah, you don't want to go there.
One of Wallace's sons says the old woman's name is Haggis, and she'll show Ed how to get there. Well, Ed goes to see Haggis, who lives in what looks like a witch's house. Have you ever seen a witchier-looking house?
That was so perfect. It was.
It doesn't look real, but it looks perfect for the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Well, she says she can't raise the dead, but she can get him vengeance. What you're asking's got a powerful price. She tells him about a thing buried in a cemetery that he needs to bring to her first. Well, he goes to the ultra-creepy cemetery and finds what he's looking for. Haggis cuts Ed and drips blood all over the mummified little creature that Ed carried in. Ed passes out as the little thing starts to move and grow.
It's bigger.
When Ed wakes up in the morning, Haggis tells him to go home, as now it begins. He goes to the normal cemetery and buries Billy with his mother. At the cabin, everyone's still arguing with Joel. Maggie and Steve go out for a walk. She's still in shock from the accident. Pumpkinhead gets right to work on Steve. Maggie runs back and tells the others, but they only halfway believe her. I don't think I'd believe somebody talking about that thing either.
Yeah, sure, honey. Yeah, uh-huh. Yep. How much have you had to drink? Yeah.
Every time Pumpkinhead kills one of these kids, Ed has a little seizure. He goes back to Haggis. It'll pass, Ed Hartley. Let it finish. This is wrong, he cries. She says there's no way Ed can stop it now. After finding Maggie and Steve's body, Joel goes outside. I'm the one you want. Pumpkinhead drags off Kim next. Joel, Chris, and Tracy run off into the woods. Ed comes to the cabin and finds several bodies. He follows the teens and shoots Pumpkinhead himself. Joel shoots it too, but that only makes it worse when it kills Joel. Chris and Joel beat on the Wallace's door, and the scene plays out just like the one in the opening segment.
They know better. Don't let anybody in if you're being chased by Pumpkinhead.
Chris and Tracy meet up with Bunt, one of the Wallace children, who wants to know if the legend is true. It is. He explains that Pumpkinhead is a demon. Then it arrives and kills Chris. Bunt and Tracy run into Ed, who now wants to help them. Tracy tells Ed about the accident and asks him to stop all this. Pumpkinhead arrives, dragging not quite dead Chris with him. Ed soon discovers that he and the monster are linked physically. Ed then shoots himself in the head. Pumpkinhead doesn't die, but neither does Ed.
A little magic at work here.
Tracy picks up the gun and shoots Ed a few more times. Well, if one shot doesn't do it.
That'll do it.
Pumpkinhead collapses and dies before combusting and burning up. We cut to Haggis burying Pumpkinhead back in his strange pumpkin patch grave. Except we see that the shriveled, mummified body is now what's left of Ed.
Uh-huh. He'll be the next Pumpkinhead.
Well, probably the main thing in this movie is the creature design and the costume for Pumpkinhead.
It's really good.
He's a real monster, all right.
Back in the golden days of practical effects.
Yes, all completely practical.
Yeah.
All of these movies this week are practical.
Mm-hmm.
In the close-ups, his face sort of looks like one of the gremlins. And the sets and the effects are also outstanding. There's a whole bunch of sequels to this, and there's good reason. It's really well done.
Yes, it was.
The
Liked it a
sequels, maybe not so much, though.
Yeah. Oh, and revisiting Lance Hendrickson, he was 48 when he did this.
Really?
But previous to this, there had been Near Dark and
Oh, yeah.
Aliens.
Aliens was before this.
This was in 86, yeah, Aliens. Yeah, and numerous other things. He'd been working since the 70s.
Okay.
So
certainly Aliens, he was pretty big at that time. Mm-hmm. He was recognizable by then.
Yeah, and long career. I mean, he's still got stuff coming out. He's had 263 IMDb credits of TV shows and movies and things.
Wow.
So he's prodigious. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's next?
I have no idea because
You were looking at Lance Hendrickson.
Looking at Lance Hendrickson.
Child's Play.
Oh, Child's Play,
1988.
the original. I wasn't sure which one was next.
Directed by Tom Holland, written by Don Mancini, John Lafia, and Tom Holland. Stars Catherine Hicks, Chris Sarandon, and Alex Vincent. Hour and 27 minutes. Trailer in the show notes. Spoiler free. The practical effects and serious treatment of an absurd situation from a strong cast makes for an entertaining movie that still holds up today. We were as entertained as we were when we saw it when it came out, if not more so.
And there have been a lot of sequels and a TV series.
Chucky has mostly devolved into a horror comedy.
Mm-hmm.
He's as much comedy and silliness as he is horror. This one, not so much. This was pretty. It still had some laughy bits,
but more humor. More humor, more serious.
More serious. Yeah,
Yeah.
This is the most serious of the series.
Yeah.
So what happens?
Well, we open on a man running down an alley with police in pursuit. He's the Strangler, a notorious serial killer.
And I don't think we ever see him strangle anyone.
No, we just take their word for it. There's a shootout between him and Detective Mike Norris. He's shot in the leg and hides in a toy store. And credits roll. This is Charles Lee Ray, the killer, who knows he can't escape this time and swears revenge on the detective and Eddie, his no-good partner who abandoned him there. He collapses next to a display of good guy dolls in the store. And if you remember, My Little Buddy was a line of dolls. I think they were definitely... Do you remember My Little Buddy?
I don't. No.
It was like the good guy dolls in real life. You know, they were child-size little, boy dolls.
Mm-hmm.
I remember those being a thing. Yeah. But anyway, he opens one of the packages and then says some magic voodoo words over the doll. There is lightning and thunder outside as the magic happens. And then the lightning comes inside. The entire store explodes from a strike. Nora staggers over after the explosion fades, finds Charles Lee Ray's dead body next to a bunch of doll toys.
Never see him again.
Never see him again, yeah. And we actually don't.
Well, okay.
He continues on and on. He had a lot of voice work. He made a good career out of this.
I think the first few movies, there may have been some flashbacks.
There were some flashbacks and stuff, but yeah, for the most part, it's just voice work for him from that point on. Well, sometimes later, Andy Barclay watches the Good Guys cartoon on TV and wishes he had one of the dolls. It's one of those, heavily merchandised toward kids things, and he's fallen for it completely. And he has some Good Guys cereal. Andy lives with his single mother, and they're obviously very close. It's his birthday, and he opens the big box, and it's clothes.
Yeah, I've had birthdays like that.
And he expresses some disappointment, but Karen didn't have time this month to save up for a good guy. Well, at work later that day, a coworker tells her about a peddler behind the store who has one for sale at a bargain. On her break, she goes and takes the good guy doll to Andy, slightly singed around the edges because, salvage from the store. It says, "Hi, I'm Chucky, and I'm your friend to the end, hidey-ho." Karen has to work tonight, so Maggie offers to babysit. There's a news report about Eddie Caputo escaping from jail, and the doll seems to notice. Andy goes to bed, and Maggie turns on some old movies, and we see Chucky running around in the background as she reads. she gets pushed out the window, where she falls 7 stories to her death.
We really don't see Chucky doing anything.
Just glimpses in the background.
Just flashes as he runs. And yeah, you don't get a good look yet.
Yeah. Karen gets home from work to find police, ambulances, and news crews outside her apartment. Detective Mike Norris tells Karen what happened. There are tiny footprints that Norris thinks are suspicious, but they aren't Andy's footprints. Norris thinks it's homicide, but he's the only one. Andy says that Chucky told him his real name is Charles Lee Ray, and he said Aunt Maggie was a real bitch and she got what she deserved. Well, Karen understandably gets angry and tells him that Chucky's just a doll, he's not alive. Well, the next morning, Karen drops Andy and Chucky off at school, but they slip out and take the bus downtown instead. Wind up in a very bad part of town where Chucky has some business to take care of. He slips inside Eddie's house, turns on the gas, and this leads to a very thorough explosion. Norris calls Karen after they pick up Andy and Chucky. Andy keeps saying that Chucky's been doing bad things, but of course no one believes him because nobody else sees Chucky move or talk.
I'm not killing people. It's my imaginary friend. Really?
Yeah, it's Chucky doing it. Yeah. Well, Chucky just sits there when anybody else is watching. He is just a doll. Mommy is doing it on purpose. Well, they bring in Dr. Ardmore, a psychiatrist who wants to take Andy away from Karen for a while. So Karen takes Chucky home without Andy, and she looks at the good guy's box, and the batteries fall out of the box. Batteries included, but they never got put into the doll. So and Chucky has been saying the robotic Chucky, toy things. She never put them in, but he's been working anyway. So she checks his battery compartment, and it's empty. And Chucky spins his head and talks to her. She screams and drops the doll, who rolls under the couch.
Surprise!
Yeah. And there's a little scuffle, and she grabs the doll, puts it in the fireplace. I'm going to make you talk. Well, he does talk. Oh, boy, does he talk. And punches and bites. This is the first time we actually see him move for real. Everything else was off screen pretty much. And he gets away. Well, Karen goes to Norris and tells him that Andy has been telling the truth.
It is a killer doll, really.
Yeah. And understandably, Norris thinks she's delusional too. So she goes to find the peddler who sold her the doll, and with Norris's help, he admits he got it from the burned-out toy store, which rings a bell in Norris's mind. The two talk about Charles Lee Ray. If Chucky killed Eddie, that means that Norris is next, but he's not convinced at all. Until he becomes convinced. He drops Karen off and is attacked in his car by Chucky, and that's quite a battle scene.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, while he's driving. Well, he burns Chucky's face with a cigarette lighter before crashing and shoots him in the shoulder, and the doll runs off. Well, Norris catches up with Karen, and they go after John, who is the man who taught Charles Lee Ray his voodoo tricks. But Chucky gets to John first and complains that when he got shot, he bled and it hurt. But he's made of plastic, so how can that happen? John says that the more time he spends in that body, the more human he will become.
And I saw a thing just the other day on, Facebook or something like that had like a selection of images of Chucky throughout this one movie.
Yeah.
And he starts out looking like a toy.
Yeah.
And toward the end, he looks a whole lot more like Brad Dourif. His hair is shorter, his chin is different.
They start progressing it?
He starts becoming more and more human, looking like Charles Lee Ray as the movie progresses.
That's cool.
I've never noticed it.
I didn't catch that.
You can kind of tell by the hairline. His hair gets shorter.
Oh, okay.
It's kind of cool if you can find that image.
That is neat. Well, John says he's not going to help Chucky. He says that is an abomination. But unfortunately, John is into voodoo, and for some reason, John made a voodoo doll of himself that he has just left laying around. Chucky gets John's voodoo doll and uses it to get the solution out of him, starts snapping legs on the doll, things like that. John says that Chucky will have to transfer himself to the first person he let in on his secret, Andy. Oh, that's how you get out of it. Well, Norris and Karen find John, who isn't quite dead, who tells them everything that's going on before he dies. His heart is almost human. It's the only way to kill him. Well, Andy's at the prison psychiatric ward for observation. And it did seem like a prison-y kind of place for a little kid. And but he's there. And he sees Chucky approaching outside, which, of course, nobody believes him. The doctor ignores the whining. Chucky steals the keys and enters Andy's cell. Andy escapes the cell, locks Chucky in. There's a chase. The doctor catches up with him. And Chucky kills the doctor with his shock treatment machine.
Bzzz.
Yeah. Well, Andy escapes the hospital and runs home, but everyone else is not far behind. Chucky knocks Andy out and starts his mind transference ritual. The lightning and thunder starts up, but Karen interrupts. There's a ridiculous battle. There is. And it just kind of goes on and on. But Karen traps Chucky in the fireplace, and Andy sets him on fire. Chucky runs around the room screaming and burning, and he's just a melted plastic shell when they finished.
I'm sure he's dead now.
Yep, all done. Well, they attend to Norris's wounds, but Andy notices that Chucky's body is gone. Give me the boy and I'll let you live, he screams. Andy shoots Chucky's head off, and his arm, and a leg, and he keeps trying to reach him anyway. Norris's partner arrives and notices the doll pieces all over the place. He brings in Chucky's head, and suddenly he's no longer a skeptic either. Chucky's body parts attack him. Norris shoots Chucky in the heart, and blood splatters everywhere. And everyone goes to the hospital, leaving Chucky chunks where they landed.
That's the end of Chucky.
And that's the end of Chucky. We never see him again.
Yeah.
Until the sequel and sequels and
like
sequels.
6 sequels and a TV series.
TV series, yeah.
We recently watched the TV series Chucky.
And we have much praise for that.
It's extremely good, yeah.
Yeah.
If you like the more recent, sillier Chucky movies, this just continues right off from those.
And I was skeptical about how can you make that into a series, and they managed to.
They did.
Yeah, it was good.
It's been out for 2 years, and they're both good.
Mm-hmm. Meg Tilly's in it a lot, and the Meg Tilly doll version of herself. What's the Tiffany? Yeah, and
lots of Chucky.
Yeah, lots of Chucky, and it just goes on, and it gets wild.
Although there is some natural humor here, this was played pretty straightforward compared to the many sequels that were more comedy than horror. Decent child actors were few and far between in the 80s, but Alex Vincent as Andy does a really good job here. Catherine Hicks and Chris Sarandon are also excellent, taking it all very seriously. Remember now, this was all before CGI, so Chucky is a mixture of puppetry, stop motion, little people, and child actors. At some points when he's running around, you can tell that it's a real person.
Mm-hmm. Little person in it.
It's all just fake enough to make it look real, which is perfect here. And I think it still holds up very well today.
Yeah, I thought so too.
They did a remake a couple of years ago, and we did a review of it, but it was not as good as
not
this.
as good, yeah.
No.
And they took a different.
It was different. He was a robot in that one.
It was an AI kind of thing, and he wasn't necessarily restricted to his body, not in the supernatural way, but in an AI way of able to inhabit other electronics and other robots and things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was all right, but
more of a science fiction take than a supernatural take.
Definitely, yeah. The original's the best.
Alex Vincent, he shows up in some of the movies, and he's very prominent in the series, and he's a decent actor.
He's like 40 or 50 now.
But carrying on the role. Yeah.
That kid just never got over it.
Yeah.
All right, so then we move on to our short of the week. What do we got?
Satanic Panic 87, which was actually a 2023 movie.
Taking place in the 80s.
Yeah.
It's close as I could get to 88.
It's a hoot.
Written and directed by Brian M. Ferguson, stars Aaron Totten, Yuki Sutton, Amy Clydesdale, and Yoshi Campbell. 3 minutes, 44 seconds. So this is one of the shorty shorts.
They pack it in, and it moves fast.
What happens?
Well, 2 teenagers watch a workout video in the 80s. And this is just the stereotypical aerobic, dressed in spandex, and, it couldn't be any more 80s, this workout video. But instead of getting them fit, it talks about how to open a doorway to hell. Aerobicize for Satan. It's all going great until bossy old granny wants them to turn off the TV and help look for her missing cat. Wonder what happened to that cat.
Where'd the cat
Wonder
go?
what will happen to Granny. Yeah. It's very funny, very well done, and extremely short. But yeah, this is one you should check out.
Yeah, it's too short to really say much about, but it's definitely worthwhile. There's a link in the show notes to watch it on YouTube.
Yeah.
What's up next?
The Serpent and the Rainbow from 1988 also.
Directed by Wes Craven, written by Wade Davis, Richard Maxwell, and Adam Rodman. Stars Bill Pullman, Kathy Tyson, Zakis Mokai. Hour and 38 minutes. I saw this at the theater.
I did too.
I hated it. I was very disappointed. I was expecting a zombie movie.
I wasn't that thrilled when I saw it.
Going through this time, I knew what we were getting into. It was much better, but it was not what it was advertised as.
Yeah. Well, it's got the problem that we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
Spoiler free. It was a bit low key, and it's inspired by true events. And they certainly beefed things up from reality like they generally do in such movies, but not enough. It's beyond a documentary, but it's really tame as a horror movie.
Yep.
It's too much of a tweener.
It's too real to be a horror movie, and it's too dull to be good.
And a lot of the horrifying things in it are just his hallucinations and dreams.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we are told that in the legends of voodoo, the serpent is the symbol of earth. The rainbow is a symbol of heaven. Between the two, all creatures must live and die. But because he has a soul, man can be trapped in a terrible place where death is only the beginning. Certainly sounds like a good way to open a movie.
It does.
Well, we begin in Haiti in 1978. We watch a group of men carrying a child-sized coffin, and they set it on fire in the middle of the street. Elsewhere, a man dies and has a funeral. Dargent Patrod is there, watching the man be buried. The dead man sheds a tear as they cover over him with dirt.
Uh-oh.
Dr. Dennis Allen, a Harvard anthropologist, lands in his helicopter. He's there to see a shaman for an interview. The old shaman makes him drink a potion, and he wakes up being chased by a jaguar in the jungle. Oh, it just wants belly rubs. He's a good kitty. The shaman laughs as Alan rolls around completely alone. He's hallucinating the whole thing.
Tripping on drugs.
Then, dead men pull Alan down into the ground. Well, he eventually wakes up, sober, but he's completely alone. He goes back to the helicopter, but finds the pilot is dead.
And that one didn't take place in Haiti, did it? That was in Africa, wasn't it? It was a different place.
Was it?
I think so. Because this is...
They don't have tigers in Haiti. You're right.
Yeah, jaguar. Yeah, but this is his thing. He goes to various places where there's these, medicinal drugs.
Okay, but in the next paragraph, the drug companies say they want him to go back to Haiti.
Okay.
But maybe it's a different trip.
I'm a little unclear about that. But anyway, this is his gig. He works for a pharmaceutical company that gets word of, hey, there's this
native
magic
medicines.
man who has a native, Yeah.
Well, he gets home to Boston and meets Cassidy, the head of a pharmaceutical company. Cassidy asks what he knows about zombification. Turns out, Alan brought back drug samples they'd never seen before. They show him the man we saw buried earlier, Christoph, but that was 7 years ago, and he's been seen recently walking around. He's a zombie, and Cassidy wants to know how it's done. He thinks it's a totally new kind of anesthesia. He wants Alan to return and get some of that to duplicate and sell. So that's the point. He's going there to get the zombie medicine.
Mm-hmm.
Alan heads back to Haiti and meets Dr. Duchamp. Duchamp shows him Marguerite, a woman who died 15 years ago. Then she takes him to see Lucien Celine, a high voodoo priest. Alan sees Petrode and recognizes him from the vision, a black magician and chief of the secret police.
And has that actor who played Petrode, occasionally he plays a good guy, but he's always just somebody weird or evil or both.
Well, there's the magic Negro trope. And I think he's one that really fills that one. He often plays some kind of, African magician or something.
Uh-huh, yeah.
Well, they go to a cemetery that night and interrupt some grave robbers. Alan accuses Duchamp of scamming him for money, and then they run into Christoph, the talking zombie. He recounts his own funeral and something about poison that goes through the skin. Lucien warns them to stay out of all this. It's too dangerous. Duchamp wants him to tell the name of the man who makes the magic powder. The man they talk to, Mozart, next wants $500 for the magic powder.
Powder, yeah.
He demonstrates his powder on a goat, which soon falls over dead. Alan promises to pay for the powder tomorrow when the goat gets up again. Well, that night, Alan has a nightmare, and the following day, he and Dr. Duchamp have sex in a cave.
That escalated quickly.
It certainly did. That came out of nowhere. Well, the government suddenly declares martial law, and everything gets very militaristic.
Yeah, this was, well, like we said,
It's
based
history,
on real
yeah.
events in Haiti. Yeah, they had some real messes over there with the government. And, yeah.
Duchamp says that Christophe has spoken out for freedom, and the government didn't like it, so they made an example out of him. Alan gets called into the police station and talks to Petrode. He warns Alan that Duchamp is a radical, as is Christophe. Petrode knows all about Alan's activities, but Alan plays dumb. As torture sounds come out of the back room, Petrode threatens him. Yeah, we come after you next.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they go to Mozart in the morning, and Alan calls him an idiot. He knows the revived goat is a different one. It's a trick.
Yeah, he made a little cut on the goat before it took the medicine, and this one doesn't have the cut. So, yeah.
Well, he then drinks the entire bottle of the drug, which is fake. No, he switched bottles at the last minute. He didn't really take the drug, which probably is some kind of common poison.
Mm-hmm.
Mozart comes out and says he can make the real powder, but there are some rules. Alan has to help him make the powder. Mozart, Alan, and Duchamp go to the cemetery that night, and Alan digs up the body of a dead witch. The police attack and take Alan prisoner. He wakes up strapped to a chair, and Petrode prepares to torture him. Then he does torture him before dumping him in the road. That night they continue to make the magic powder. The process will take another night. Mozart also warns Alan about Petrode's revenge. That night, Alan dreams of being buried alive, and when he wakes up, a woman's in bed with him, without her head.
Ew.
He's arrested again, and Petrode knows exactly what Alan dreamed last night. He put the dreams there.
Uh-huh. Or did he?
The police march Alan onto a plane at gunpoint. Mozart gets onto the plane and gives him the jar of magic powder, which is all ready to go. Back in Boston, Alan and Cassidy analyze the drug, and it's pretty amazing. The powder makes a person appear dead for 12 hours, but then they wake up. They want to call it Zumbanol.
And this is where they lost me a little bit, inspired by true events. And okay, so
where is it?
Where's Zumbanol? Yeah, we're not using that today. Whatever happened to that?
Waiting, it's pending FDA approval, I'm sure.
Okay.
Alan tells his boss he can't get through to Duchamp on the phone.
Well, maybe they realize that one of the necessary ingredients is a witch skeleton, and those are in short supply. They just can't synthesize those in the lab.
Yeah. Alan is warned to stay away from Haiti, but he still has these creepy hallucinations. Cassidy's wife goes crazy and attacks Alan and goes into convulsions, but she had nothing to do with any of this. Alan decides he goes back to Haiti. He's going to get me wherever I am, he says. Lucien grabs him from the airport. He's been hiding and protecting Duchamp. Petrode does a spell somewhere, and Lucien dies painfully. He also has Mozart beheaded. Someone spits yellow powder on Alan, who soon falls down. "Don't let them bury me! I'm not dead!" he yells. Well, he hears and sees everything as the doctor pronounces him dead. Petrode tells the doctor that he's made all the arrangements, and he puts a tarantula in the coffin before sealing it up and burying him.
He's just a nasty man.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah.
Sometime later, we hear Alan wake up in the coffin screaming. Christophe, of all people, digs him up. The zombie rescues the zombie.
Uh-huh.
Well, there are radio reports of revolution, and the dictator has fled the country. Alan staggers into town as Duchamp is being executed. When Petrode hears the people outside revolting, he commands Alan to come to him.
The people are revolting.
Yeah, some of them are.
Yeah, some of them. Yeah.
Duchamp smashes the container that holds Lucien's soul, and Petrode starts seeing a jaguar chasing him until he bursts out in flame and dies. Suddenly, Petrode jumps through the wall and fights Alan one more time. His own torture chamber chair eventually attacks him and pulls him down to hell. Or at least that's what Alan sees in his mind.
Didn't really happen.
Maybe. Who knows?
Yeah.
Well, okay, like I said, I saw this when it first came out in the theaters, and it was very clearly marketed as a zombie movie. I was bored and disappointed.
It wasn't what I expected either. Yeah.
Yeah, this time around we knew what we were going to get into, and it was better, but it's still not a...
It's still just kind of okay.
Very marginally horror.
Yeah.
It's more of a drama with some horror-like nightmares. There's no real zombies here, as it's based on a nonfiction book. There's a small bit of magic, but nothing that couldn't be explained non-magically with hallucinations. It's too realistic to be a fun horror film, and too magical, fictionalized, to be a documentary. It's well made and well acted, but it leaves a lot to be desired as a horror film.
Exactly.
It's all right.
It's all right. It's okay. Yeah.
All right. Whoa, one more. Waxwork from 1988, written and directed by Anthony Hickox. Stars Zach Galligan, Deborah Foreman, and Jennifer Bassey. Hour and 35 minutes. Did you see this when it came out?
I did not. No. I saw it.
I couldn't tell you. I don't remember.
I saw it many years later.
I have seen it before, but it's been a while.
Rented it in the early 2000s.
I could go with that. I probably did too.
It was quite a while after.
Well, it's got a lot of humor and silliness mixed in with horror. It's almost like an anthology with little sub-stories as people are pulled into the various exhibits. It's got stuff going for it. It's not quite great, but it's entertaining. And I think Kevin liked it more than Brian did.
Yes, I think so.
You did?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of thought it was kind of dumb.
And I thought it was kind of good.
It's a moderate thumbs up from both of us.
You're more of a 4, and I'm more of a 6, 7.
Yeah, I'll go with that,
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
What happens?
It's a dark and stormy night at the big old house. What a great way
It
to
always
start.
is.
Yeah. The owner's head is set on fire and all his valuables are stolen.
Well, that escalated quickly.
Well, okay, yeah. And then Mark and his wealthy mother talk about us and them.
And this is part of the part I didn't like. They were so obviously rich people stereotype snobs that, I mean, even rich snobs don't act this snobby.
They certainly were. Well, his mother certainly is, yeah.
With the butler and, getting the butler to get him a cigarette. Oh, come on. People don't act like that.
It didn't seem realistic.
No.
Yeah. Seemed like a caricature. But Mark's a decent enough fella, I think. They also mentioned that some people have gone missing in town. And he's a college student, but she won't allow him to have a caffeine until he's all grown up. So on the way out, the butler sneaks him coffee and a cigarette. Get him started on his day. Well, Sarah and China talk about boys. And suddenly they notice a waxwork exhibit that they've never seen before.
This is right there in the middle of this suburban neighborhood.
Yeah, weird. Well, the man outside is very strange, and he invites them to a private showing at midnight. And they can bring up to 6 friends. And then he just kind of vanishes. Well, Mark rushes to class. Looks like his history teacher is a Nazi. Or very militant. I mean, he's a weirdo. Sarah tells Mark, Tony, Gemma, and a few others about the Waxworks, and they all want to go see it. So they go there at midnight, right there in the residential neighborhood, which is a weird location. A little person named Junior opens the door and lets them in. The inner doors open, and they go into the museum, and all the wax figures look surprisingly real. Tony accidentally drops his lighter into a display and steps into it, and he goes through a portal. And suddenly his hair is long, and he's in the woods now. He wonders if it's hypnosis or holograms or something. But it seems to be a whole new world that he's trapped in. He walks up to the big house. Someone inside tells him to go away. But he goes inside anyway, talks to an angry man who turns into a werewolf. And the werewolf bites him. And then 2 men come in with a gun and silver bullets. Tony soon turns as well, and the old man with the gun shoots them both. Back at the museum, Mark walks right past the werewolf exhibit.
Where's Tony?
Well, there's an extra werewolf standing there now. Yeah. China steps into the Dracula exhibit, and a portal gets her as well. And Dracula's in his castle throwing a dinner party. He serves China some raw meat and blood sauce. She takes a bite, and everyone else at the table slurps down their bloody meat. Afterwards, she's sent to her room, and she wonders about the intense dream she's having. Well, Stefan, Dracula's son, comes in and tries to bite her. She runs downstairs straight into the cellar where a man named Charles tells her about the vampires. They're real. She uses a cross to make them explode. She tries to get away but runs right into Dracula. Chomp. And back at the waxwork, Mark finally notices that Tony is gone. Sarah checks out the Marquis de Sade display with interest. Mark wants to leave since he can't find Tony or China. Junior says, they left a little earlier. A football player comes into the waxworks, and the proprietor pushes him into the Phantom of the Opera display. And the proprietor is aghast that they made a movie about that. Well, Mark likes Sarah, and Sarah likes Mark, but she's playing hard to get, and they both go home. Mark calls China and Tony's families in the morning, but neither of them came home last night. He goes to the police, and Inspector Roberts says 13 people have gone missing in the last 2 weeks. Roberts and Mark go back to the waxwork to investigate. Their proprietor lets them in, but he doubts the missing teens visited the place yet, since they haven't even opened yet. The detective looks around, and there's nothing to see other than the displays, so they leave. But Roberts returns and sneaks in later. He looks at the victim in the Dracula display, takes a chunk out of the face of the wax statue that looks like China as a sample, and he steps into the Egyptian display, and next thing you know, he's helping a man open a mummy's tomb.
Don't do it.
Yeah, now he's one of the stories. And the old professor there reads a scroll with a curse on it. Meanwhile, Sarah opens a book on the Marquis de Sade in Mark's attic. Things get all weird, and then Mark interrupts her with the details of his father's mysterious death. Mr. Lincoln, the grandfather's assistant, went missing at that time. Lincoln is the same man who runs the waxworks today. They find a picture of him. Meanwhile, the mummy in the Egyptian display wakes up and kills everyone in the tomb, including that police officer, Roberts. Mark and Sarah go to see Sir Wilfrid, and they tell him the story so far. He says that Mark's grandfather collected 18 horror trinkets, all of which were stolen 40 years ago by Mr. Lincoln, who sold his soul to the devil. And Lincoln has created whole environments for his victims, all 18 of them. And once he collects the whole set, the dead will rise and consume all things. So they have to burn the waxworks and stop this.
Okay, I'm on board.
Boy, it's a little bit complicated.
A
little bit, yeah. So anyway, Lincoln's on a quest to end the world, bring on the apocalypse. I guess it starts small with 18 wax figures, but it's a start. Mark and Sarah return to the magazine, and they plan on setting the displays on fire. Except Sarah steps into the Marquis de Sade display, who chains Sarah up and prepares to whip her, but she's kind of into that, and she's kind of hot on the Sade. Sorry.
The Marquis de Sade shows up in an awful lot of horror movies.
Mm-hmm.
Did he really do anything? I thought he was just like into some weird sexy games or something. Was he really a bad guy?
I think
I haven't done any research on him.
I think it's really exaggerated in the movies.
I think so.
Yeah. Well, meanwhile, Mark has stepped into black and white land, and the zombies are coming for him. He steps back through the portal and ends up in de Sade land. He breaks in to release Sarah, who doesn't really want to be released. He demonstrates that the Marquis can't hurt him because Mark knows, that this isn't all real. Well, Sarah gives in, goes with Mark back to the real world. The bad guys in the museum grab Mark and Sarah as a young couple come in to check out the displays. Well, they soon vanish into the displays and are killed. "Live, my children, live," says Lincoln. He's finally got his 18. And the displays all come to life. The werewolf, Dracula, the Marquis, Jack the Ripper, Frankenstein, Mummy, and all the others come out of their displays. And suddenly, Sir Wilfrid comes in with Mark's butler and a whole bunch of other guys. He gives everyone swords, and they battle the monsters. China comes to Mark, and she apologizes, but she's a vampire now and tries to bite him. Well, it comes down to Mark versus the Marquis, fencing, and Lincoln watches. The Marquis loses, but Lincoln's got a gun. Lincoln is the guy who killed Mark's grandfather and stole the 18 trinkets. That all comes out now. So Wilford shoots Lincoln in the back, and he falls into the vat of wax. Because, there's a vat of wax.
If you're going to have a vat of wax, somebody has to fall into it.
Of course, somebody is going to fall into the open vat of wax. That's how these movies work. Well, the fire spreads through the Waxworks, and the young couple are the only ones to escape. Happy ending.
A lot of body count there at the end.
I mean, a happy ending for them, but boy, that was quite a body count.
Got to find a new butler.
Yeah, that too. Yeah. They're hard to find, I understand. Good
well,
ones. Yeah.
The editing and cinematography here, especially in the beginning, are absolutely terrible.
It's very hit and miss, yeah.
And the acting for most of the, quote, teens is equally bad.
You didn't believe those people in their 20s were early teens?
I think some of them were in their 30s. Well, the werewolf costume here isn't terrible. The mummy segment is pretty short, but he looks good, being suitably slimy under all the wrappings. All the monsters at the end look fairly decent, but the big climactic battle at the end was pretty ridiculous. Just like 40 people fighting with swords all at once. It looked like a long saloon fight from a cheap Western.
I saw a thing, read a little bit about somebody that was involved with the production, and they started running out of money. And he acknowledges they were kind of disappointed that it ended up being a saloon fight. You mentioned Western. It's a bar fight at the end. It's just hand-to-hand, chaos of a bunch of people fighting.
Well, it's got all the usual horror tropes, but it's also got a ton of comedy, some of which is good and some of it that falls pretty flat. It was entertaining, but I think it was a little too silly for my taste.
Yeah, I liked it better than not liked it.
Okay.
So, a weak thumbs up. But I think of boy, I don't know, Pumpkinhead or the original Child's Play, which is my favorite of the week? I don't know.
I think Pumpkinhead is probably better as a standalone film, but Chucky is better because of what it led to.
Okay, I'll buy that. Yeah.
All right. And then over again at horrorbulletin.com, we got Friday the 13th, Part 7, The New Blood, which I think we both kind of liked it, but thought it was nothing special. It was more of the same.
Kind of more of the same, yeah.
Not bad, but...
Well, they throw in a psychic this time.
Yeah, they did.
So that's a convoluted way to bring him back.
And then there's Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors, where it's a mental hospital. Is it a mental hospital?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Where a whole bunch of patients...
For young folks, yeah.
Find that they have the ability to go into each other's dreams and fight back with Freddy.
And Nancy comes back.
She does.
Yeah, which I thought was pretty awesome.
But it's only the third movie, so... Mm-hmm. I think she comes back for a couple others, doesn't she?
She wasn't in the second one.
No.
Yeah, but she comes back for this one.
I think most people would say there is no second one.
It happened.
It did, I guess. All right, if you say so.
Yeah.
All right, and that is our show for this week. Tune in next time when we will have...
More movies.
More older movies, I think. We've got Burnt Offerings.
Oh, that was a good one.
Psycho 2 and Psycho 3.
Interesting.
And some other stuff that hasn't posted yet because we're recording this before they have.
That's all right.
But yeah, we got other stuff coming next week, but Psycho 2 and 3, you don't hear much about that. You always hear how great Psycho was.
Classic. Epic.
And I like 2 and 3 quite a bit.
Yeah, me too.
Anthony Perkins didn't care for number 3, but I thought it was just fine.
Yeah, I thought it tied in very nicely. And yeah, they're worth seeing for sure. If you like Psycho, and you should see them in order.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, if you haven't seen Psycho, you should see, definitely 1, 2, 3 in that order.
And there's a 4 that I have not seen.
I have not either.
Okay.
No.
We have it. We should watch it someday.
We should watch it. And then we would have the whole set.
But not for next week.
and they did a remake of Psycho, which was totally unnecessary. A shot-for-shot remake.
That shot-for-shot? Yeah.
Yeah, we shall not speak of that.
We've already watched the original. It's good enough.
Yeah.
I learned that lesson with Funny Games a couple weeks ago. Shot-for-shot remakes are boring.
Yeah, let's redo it in color, shot-for-shot. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
All right, well, we'll talk to you next week. Until then, I'm Brian.
And I'm Kevin.
See you.
See ya.